The Correctional Services Department maintains that parole remains a big part of the reformative approach of the country's criminal justice system. It comes after Chris Hani assassin Janusz Waluś's release on parole led to widespread criticism. The 69-year-old's release comes after the Constitutional Court last month ruled that a prior decision refusing parole was irrational and unlawful. The Justice Minister joins us now for more on the story. Ronald Lamola, good evening, Minister. Thanks for your time. Firstly, let's just get straight into it. What are the conditions of the release of parole for Janusz Waluś?
Yeah, thank you very much, Kathy. Indeed, painful as it is, we had to comply with the Concord order and judgment, and we have indeed put very strict parole conditions, which are stipulated in terms of the Correctional Services Act that we have put for the parolee. But I'm not at liberty to disclose the exact details, but they are tabulated in the Correctional Services Act as with regards to that at all material times when he needs to be monitored, he must be present at a place where he's supposed to be monitored, the place of residence, the issues of generality in terms of his participation to various issues, either in the economy, social, political, and so forth. So there are those conditions that are stipulated in the Act, which we have looked into, and obviously had to ensure that the parole conditions are very strict so that the monitoring is practical and possible.
When we look at the Act, of course, it's very broad and it deals with quite a number of provisions for parole. Can you be a bit more specific in terms of what it is that you have applied, or are you basically saying everything that is listed in the Act forms part of his parole conditions?
I am saying I was guided by the Act to apply the conditions. As I said earlier on, I can't be specific because that will disclose the conditions.
Is it not in the public interest? Is it not in the public interest?
No, it is in the public interest to know that I have applied the law and the Act in terms of those conditions, which I have done. But it is, at this stage, remains confidential, those conditions.
Why are they confidential?
We have applied very strict conditions. Because we have never disclosed any conditions for any parolee. We do it daily, Kathy. There are a lot of parolees that we have in our system on a day-to-day basis. You can imagine if we have to disclose for everyone, it will be it's not in the interest of confidentiality to do so. We have lots of parolees across the country, so we don't want to set the wrong precedent by disclosing for any of our parolees.
Many South Africans have been asking questions about who exactly is going to be footing the bill for the welfare of Janusz Waluś now that he has been released on parole. In whose care has he been released into?
Yeah, that is part of the parole conditions, Katie. And there is a section in the Department of Correctional Services which is called Community Corrections, which will be responsible to ensure that he complies with all the parole conditions, and that sections in the department deals with the compliance of all parolees in a particular area. And in this particular area, that section that is dealing with monitoring of that area will be the one that is handling the monitoring.
It's been very clear that, of course, the South African government wants to be able to keep a close eye on Janusz Waluś while he's out on parole. And so the question over who is taking care of him is quite important because, you know, we had, of course, under the Zondo Commission, the release of details of somebody like Eugene de Kock, who turned out to have been offered a state house and was receiving a stipend. You know, so basically he was being maintained at the cost of taxpayers. Will the same be afforded to Janusz Waluś?
No, it's not afforded to Janusz Waluś. He is going through the standard procedures and operating a manual of the Department of Correctional Services that applies to all the parolees. As I've said, he will be monitored by the Community Corrections section in the department. and the such cost that we are talking about, and stipends, there's no such conditions. We do not have. He will not be receiving any stipend. He will not be paid, and he will not be put, as you have said, with regards to the same conditions as the one of Mr. Dikoko.
When we look at, again, the matter of Janusz Waluś, of course, one of the other things that has come up around his parole conditions is what exactly happens during this period. So we don't know whose care he's been released into. The state has said that it's concerned about him re-offending, potentially repeating similar crimes. So what does that mean in as far as the security around him and any concerns that he may link up with groups that have previously supported him and his radical views?
Yeah, Kathy, we expect that he has undergone all the processes of psychologist, psycho assessments, and all processes with regards to rehabilitation of an offender. And in line with the Correctional Services Act, which at the core is the principle of restorative justice, we expect the offender to comply with all the parole conditions, and that he is not going to reoffend, is not going to be a nuisance to society, but he is going to be different other than what he went into our facilities on. And our expectation is that this period in our facility will have played a key important role in terms of the conduct and his behavior outside our facilities.
All right, that is the Correctional Services Minister. Just before I let you go, what happens after 2 years, Minister?
He will now be released out of the system of correctional services.
Any indication?
After that period of 2 years.
All right, Minister, we'll have to leave it there. I know you're pressed for time. Justice Minister Ronald Lamola there on the release of Janusz Waluś.